Good afternoon. We are about to dive into today's news, locate truth, separate fact from fiction, and discover how you, a Christian in America, could be interpreting today's news. I'm your host, a researcher, a mom, and a business owner, right here in this beautiful country, the United States of America. Now, let's hold this news up to the light. How are you on this marvelous Saturday? I am doing well. We have plenty of ground to cover today as we go over the primary election results from last week or this previous week, as well as review our topics on data centers and how we are to approach our government with those topics. So we're going to do our primary election update. As you know, the gubernatorial race here in Georgia has entered a runoff, and that's between Burt Jones and Rick Jackson. They will go head to head once again in June the 16th. Be sure you have registered to vote if you are voting on a Republican ticket. Also, there are plenty of state line representatives who have also entered into a runoff. You can stay up to date about all of that information at ballotpedia.com, which we do here at PureLight News very often. So thank you once again for all who did show up and vote. Congratulations to those who have already secured their spot, including Keisha Lance Bottoms, who will be on the Democratic side of our gubernatorial race this November. All right. To recap you on our data centers, let's dive right into the slides portion of our program today. All right. Beautiful. As you know, Atlas LLC and Prologis are at the hem of this data center mega hub plant that they are planning and is proposed and is beginning to move forward right off of Welcome to Sargent Road here in Coweta County, Georgia. 17 to 19 Coweta residents have filed a lawsuit against Coweta County government and Atlas to appeal the rezoning of the rural to industrial land, citing concerns over the impact on rural land and environment. It is extremely important that we stay up to date on the next steps with this lawsuit, because Coweta County has become a main focus in Georgia to watch and see how we handle the data center issue here in Coweta, and that will do what we call set a precedence. So here in the United States, there is not a precedence of data centers being challenged for eminent domain, and that would actually go to the electrical companies that rule over the district. Here, we're facing Georgia Power, which rules over the district or has the contract over the district in which this site is proposed to be. Georgia Power would need to expand their lines in order to support such an infrastructure for a data center. So if they expand those lines, then someone has to pay for that cost. And that has two different revenues, two different routes that can go. If the data centers themselves pay for the cost to build up the infrastructure, then it is a private project. If Georgia rules that citizens will pay, meaning that the citizens would see a difference on their electrical bills, which is going to show that we have contributed to the widening of our infrastructure here, electrical infrastructure and output, then that's a public project. And that is the main core issue with eminent domain. Is this a public or a private investment? And will it benefit a private company more than the public? That is what is up for question here in Georgia, as well as across our nation. Places like Ohio, who are facing very large acreages of land, of rural land being rezoned for data centers, all have to come up with a consensus about whether or not this is a private or a public issue. And eminent domain, as we learned, is the ability for government to take a property for the sake of infrastructure, that it is for the sake of building up an area, um, building up an area for the sake of public good. I'm going to go ahead and let you see that as well, of course. So eminent domain refers to the power of the government to take private property and convert it into public use, referred to as a taking. The Fifth Amendment provides that the government may only exercise this power if they provide just compensation to the property owners. A taking may be the actual seizure of property by the government, or the taking may be in the form of a regulatory taking, which occurs when the government restricts a person's use of their property to the point of constituting a taking. Yes. So that is where we are here in Georgia. As we follow this closely, we'll be looking for the first appearances, which each party, the citizens, the 17 to 19 residents who have brought the lawsuit, as well as Atlas and Coweta County, would also present their starting or opening arguments as to which way this is going to go. And the results of this lawsuit will make a dramatic difference in not just Coweta County, but our nation and many other lawsuits such as this. And when you ask, well, what's the big idea? We're facing a completely different look on what America could look like if not just one or two residents are having their homes taken for the sake of public good. But what if this is happening now? Several residents in several counties, in several states, is going to reshape the way that our nation looks. And yes, that will give us a tremendous amount of artificial intelligence power. It will also put a precedence on what America considers to be most important, the values of our private property or the values of staying connected to the world. It is a balance that must be determined righteously with wisdom. So we would look to our representatives who we have elected to stand in the gap and represent our views and beliefs. That will go to our state representatives here in Georgia. You have your Georgia legislative that we would begin to rally to, send emails, send requests, as well as request meetings with to discuss what we believe is necessary or for the good of the people. So because data centers is a fairly new topic, there haven't been many long-term projects that can tell us what are the long-term effects on the property. We know what the proposed effects are. We know that data centers use a tremendous amount of power and water, and that they can deplete natural resources from a community. What are we going to do to build that back up? There are solutions available. Also, when we're in a position of pausing the memorandums that are being put in place that are causing the projects to pause for the sake of deliberation, the public officials being able to litigate and speak about what they believe, what the citizens are saying, and what is most important. We have to be active during those times. Just because the project is paused doesn't mean the project workers are paused. We have to continue to educate ourselves, continue to build up on strength and knowledge so that we know what the next steps should be. That's extremely important, that if you know a data center project will move forward, during your fight, also be gathering information about what can benefit the community. It's not all about taxes. There are other things. They would take, for example, a waste management company that comes into an area. The citizens are going to fight that because waste management, we know, does also leave some effects on our natural environment. However, there are some benefits that some areas may require from waste management, such as public road cleanups once a month, such as free trash dumping for residents. Those are incentives that must continue for extended a period of time. And no, it does not offset or take away the environmental damages that are caused, but it is something that says, if you're coming, you must provide services to this community beyond just what you're offering for a financial institution. It can't be, well, the services are now available to you. Well, the services are available, and so are your services are still available to expand and expound upon. Never hesitate to ask for more. What more can you do in this community? What can you give back to this community? As we know, Coweta County is a hub for nonprofits. Nonprofits should also be at the hem of these topics, or could be at the hem of these topics. And really seeing how can nonprofits benefit from data centers, because that when you are located close to a data center, you do have more real-time data available. You have high power access, which reduces lag to our internet connection. So what can we request from data center projects as well? These are things that have to be discussed with, or should be discussed with, the project managers themselves, which brings us into another topic or issue, which is that those data center projects are usually under non-disclosure agreements until a certain amount of time. So once you do become made aware of the project, it is important to request an open record so that you can find out who that project manager is and make representation at your county commissioners meeting for what to request. As we know, yes, we are opposing these data centers in rural areas, completely understood. We also need to have in our back pocket what we require from data centers that do make it into our communities. How will you give back to that community? What are we requiring our commissioners to bargain for at the table? Because taxes, yes, they do benefit. Yes, they will save us money in the long run. However, there are some benefits that can take place right here today before that. And we don't have to think way outside the park, guys. We've got little league teams. We have AI teams in schools. Our schools use screens like never before. How about we get them the top grade of what they're using? There's an idea. All right. Now, how do we take this to a state level? Last week, we looked at some imagery that showed us some diagrams on how a bill is drawn up and what's our part of that process. So we're going to bring that back to the stage and we're going to take a look at it once again. Okay. All right. Beautiful. So you have an idea. We're bringing this back to you and I. We're bringing this back to what you and I can do to make a difference in our communities. So you have an idea about what can help or what would offset some of this data center action. Let's use, for example, the engineering of data centers could be more sustainable if water was recycled and reused for the cooling process of a data center. You think that it would be a great idea if this was a requirement for data center projects, which it should be. So you have an idea, you identify an issue in your community and come up with an idea to make a difference. Bring it to your state legislator. You contact your state representative or senator, share your idea and ask them to consider it. The legislature reviews your idea. So they take that back to a committee. You can also request a public hearing at the committee where you're able to present your idea to the colleagues themselves. Discuss it with colleagues and introduce a bill to address it. So a bill is introduced. The legislator files the bill with the legislature, gives it a number and making it official. So if that committee votes that, hey, this should be a bill, this is something that could benefit us, this is something that should be long-term, then they create the bill. That doesn't mean it's signed into law that day. That means it is signed into public record that this has been presented as a possible solution to a problem on a state level. The bill must then move through the state legislature, first reading, committee hearing, committee vote, a floor debate, and a chamber vote. And this is all within the state of Georgia. So these are the Georgia representatives that every district votes for. Here in District 3, I do believe we still have Mr. John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock is who we voted in for this district. So those are the type of people that you need to know. What are your thoughts on said issues? Say them publicly. As we know, John Ossoff has made some remarks about where data centers should go, keeping them in industrial areas, and some sustainability comments that he has made. However, we don't have an official public statement from Raphael Warnock on what his opinion about data centers are. We should know because as representatives begin to bring bills to the floor, we should have a general consensus of what our state's representatives are thinking, or we could have that consensus if the information was brought by the state representative themselves, getting ahead of the topic for their constituents to know, is this someone that we want to keep in office to represent us this way? The bill is debated, amended if needed, and must pass both the House and the Senate. Once both chambers pass the bill, it is sent to the governor for consideration. That's the governor of your state. Here we're talking about Georgia. The governor's decision, the governor can sign the bill into law, veto it, or allow it to become law without a signature, meaning I don't fully agree. However, I'm not going to withhold it from becoming law in Georgia. So you can follow and track the bill formations and creations online here at the .gov websites here in Georgia. Also, if that bill is proven to make a difference in Georgia, it may be something that we want to bring to the United States Congress to see, hey, is this something that should be considered nationwide? Is this something that could prevent our problem nationwide? And if so, same process. You bring it, it's still in the hands of you. Of course, your representative could bring it if they are in agreement, and they are standing firmly behind it, then they could bring it. But if you don't have the support that you're looking for, nothing prevents you. If you do have the support you're looking for, prayerfully from a strong prayer team who's prayed you all the way through, and you have confidence and courage, and you know that God is backing you, meaning you have absolutely no fear. And like David, you enter the room with your bill in your billfold, and you pull that thing out and you read before Congress, practicing beforehand so that you know down to the minute how long you'll have to speak. And hey, that thing could become law nationwide. That is what we do, you guys, because we elect representatives for us. That is the democratic process of our national republic. Yes, America is a republic, and we did review that last week as well. That this is how we hold our representatives accountable, by our democratic process. We are a republic where we have representatives represent our thoughts and to bring them forward nationwide, and we have someone to hold accountable versus everyone just voting on an issue. And we may emotionally feel this way today, but if we don't have a process that gives us more time to deliberate what is righteous, then we could find ourselves in a back and forth in our nation. So that is where our founding fathers had the wisdom to institute a republic, where you are able to hold a specific individual accountable for one district and representing the thoughts and ideas of that person. That way, if you're not in agreement with the way that that thing took place, you are now in a position, the people are now in a position to vote out that representative and say, you are not appropriately representing us. Right? And this is that process on display. So America is a republic operating by democratic process. A republic is a form of government in which power belongs to the people and is exercised by their elected representatives. What is a democratic process? A democratic process means decisions are made through fair, open, and participatory methods, meaning elections are our methods. So fair, open, and participatory means that we all have the opportunity to participate. That is the beauty of elections. We have runoffs coming up here in Georgia, and it is very important that we participate. Yes, that we participate. Even if, it's very important that we participate. Yes. Fair elections. Fair elections is something that we use loosely at the lips because we say things and we think that it's a slogan or a catchphrase, but a fair election has to be a common sense. That means that it is fair that I should be able to participate. It is also fair that criminals, illegals should not participate. Because what is stopping you from being persuaded, or bought out to represent a vote in the wrong way? In the wrong way. How freely have we become with the idea of being an American? We sing that we're proud to be an American, but what makes an American? Is it simply that you live here? Is that what makes an American? Does a Muslim person who moves to a nation, and we're going to use a radical Muslim for those of you who need that. A radical Muslim travels to America, and they live here, and they love the hot dogs, the turkey, of course, or chicken, whatever. And totally being non-offensive with that. I really don't know if you eat hot dogs or not, but if you do, then they love the chicken hot dogs, right? They love baseball. They participate in all the things. Does that make them American? Now, if they love all the things and go through the process to legally come here and receive their visas, be here the amount of time, learn the American culture, and become a United States citizen, does that make them American? Yes, it's a trick question. And yes, you're going to answer it within yourself. Why? Why does that make them American? What do you expect them to do with their new citizenship? How do you expect them to influence the future boys and girls of tomorrow with their new earned citizenship? What are the requirements for Americans? What is at the heart of the United States of America? One nation under God, Jesus Christ. Wonderful questions to reflect on. And as we are moving forward into becoming a nation of people who are returning to our first love and repenting for our sins, and also inviting the Lord back into every area of our lives, publicly and privately, these are questions to consider. They're questions to consider how you, a Christian in America, could be interpreting that process. Questions to consider. Now, moving forward, we also know that our White House has released, the Department of Labor has also released a new program where we are allowing Pell Grants for trades, services, training. Isn't that unique and wonderful? Oh, it just makes me proud to be an American. It does. Yes, so for those of you who are familiar with Job Corps, the Job Corps programs were recently reduced and minimized. Some of them were put at a stop. And the ideas were revisited and reshaped. And we now see that our Department of Labor has released a new program where you would be able to apply for a Pell Grant, just like you would if you were going to technical college. And that will give you an open enrollment ticket into a service, a trade training program. Yes, so a trade is anything that requires your skill and knowledge to perform, such as plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and all of the wonderful things. So this does two things. Not only does it advance us in our education and knowledge, but it also brings up the value system of the American youth. Yes, it does. Everybody can't be a doctor and lawyer. Oh, my goodness. But if you have the ability to learn, then you can be an awesome plumber. And guess what? We will never fall short of the need of plumbers. Never. We're always going to need a plumber because there's something else that we always do. Yeah. And we're always going to need an electrician because we love lights. We do. Yes. We're always going to need HVAC people because, my goodness, it's hot, right? And then it's cold. So bless the Lord. Thank you, Lord, for that program. That is an awesome incentive for our youth. It is wonderful to see. And Now here comes the awesome part of this program where I tell you the wonderful things happening with Ambassador MC of Christ Institute and me. So AEOCI has moved forward in partnership with WODD, Women of Distinguished Destiny, on the Net Worth Network to publish broadcasting out from the embassy. Yes, giving you Holy Ghost news from start to finish. And we look forward to the future of. And if you are interested in more things like this, you can email Embassy Human Services at aeoci@gmail.com. And if you did not know, I and my business partner, Ms. Eleanor Haynes, do own a cleaning company. So you should scan the QR code so that you can schedule a consultation and receive a spring cleaning discount and allow these clean hands to service you. Thank you so much for tuning in live with Pure Light News. I am your host, Miss Katherine.